Okay, now we're ready to go. Actually, share my screen to do that. Video recording. Okay, now we're ready to go. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm Jim Nichols, and senior developer at TherapyNotes, medical records company specializing in the behavioral health space. However, here I'm here to talk about Windows IoT and building UWP apps. So I brought it here, and it looks like, of course, as demos go, it doesn't work. So I can still show it to you anyway. It's running on the Windows machine, but just know that it is running at home. This is a copy of it, not the actual one. But I didn't want to mess that one up. So with that, I guess let's keep going here. So some contact information for me. I put them pretty much in order of where I'm most active. I'm not really a blogger. I'm not really on Twitter much.
You're advocate for it.
Yeah. Untap the most. Instagram, which we'll get to in a second, and through proxy of those first two, I end up on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn, and there's my personal email address, but various ways. And of course, this meetup here, I'm one of the co-organizers. In case anyone hasn't been here before. So first one is talk about why I did this project, and the reasons are listed there below. I'm a photographer, I'm a programmer, and a bit of a tinkerer. So main reason I did it was I wanted to do a digital picture frame. I've been a photographer for a number of years now, and I have a lot of images on my machine, so a lot of images at home. So a few years ago bought a NAS, and I've been pretty much filling that up and filling that up and filling that up. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, so I brought up my file count here, and these are my images. And it's going and going and going. So I have a lot of images to go through. And I obviously don't want to use the conventional means. Yeah, and it's still going. I don't want to use, and I sped it up actually. I didn't want to use conventional means to, copy files to a SD card or USB stick or something like that. And a lot of the frames I found in the market that were actually connected, it's still going. The frames I found on the market that were connected, they worked through Dropbox, which for is 600 something gig. So that a lot of frames that they either work through Dropbox, which I have too many folders for that, and you still will end up doing the same thing. I don't use any of the online photo sharing sites or anything like that, and I just wanted connectivity to a photo frame that I can display at home. So took a look at what's out on the market. And right now, I took the screenshot, I think, last week. So this is a 21-inch frame, and it's $339 for a digital frame. And so it displays videos, and it's an MP3 player. I'm not sure why that's a thing, but it plays MP3s. Motion sensor, has 16 gig of flash storage. Now, that's obviously not going to work for me, but it does have SD and USB connectivity. But I wanted more than that. Being an Android user and user of Google Photos, a few years ago, Google added animations to what do they call it? Auto also to their photos. So they'll take photos and just start applying filters. They will take any series of photos that you take in rapid succession, create a GIF form. They'll take movies and create GIFs from them. So seeing that on my phone, that was one of the cool features that I really, really wanted in a picture frame, and I couldn't find one that could support that. So then I turned to, Raspberry Pi and started playing around with Raspbian. However, I couldn't find anything in the Linux, well, not that, the Raspbian market, Raspbian area to meet my needs in terms of controls or even projects. There's one called Magic Mirror. It's a little overkill for what I needed. basically does something like this, except it gives you weather and Twitter feeds and other social media feeds and things like that, emails. I didn't want all that. I just wanted to display pictures. So again, so these are my reasons. Programming powers. That's powers, not ability. Which I'll get to in a second. I have a NAS, so a NAS is greater than probably media cards. And at the time, I had too much free time. So what else would you do with free time to do a personal project? Also, I wanted to learn a new skill. So around the time Windows IoT Core had come out on the market, I figured I'd give it a try. So I went with that. I didn't want to use the cloud. I mean, it's surprising to some people. However, I have a lot of images and I invested in the NAS and I had it all local. So why go out to the network, go out to the internet just to come back into my place and show a picture? That didn't make sense to me. So, and as I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to use social media, and social media isn't a good place for storing memories. By memories, I mean photos. I wanted to be able to recall my photos, and a lot of the social media sites, you put them out there and you don't really revisit it unless something like Facebook reminds you that such and such happened 2 years ago on this day. That might be the only time you see it. So, again, there are no products or projects that fit my needs. I want animated GIFs. And also I'm a glutton for punishment, which we'll get to later. Also, there's a growing interest, at the time, and there still is a growing interest in IoT. I think it's 200 billion, I think is predicted by 2020 or something like that, connected devices online, and this will be one of them. So, which there is some cloud features in it, but I'll get to that in a second. Also, Raspberry Pi is cool. If you've never played with a Raspberry Pi, I suggest you invest in the 35 bucks it takes to get one, or the 5 bucks it takes for the Zero, and play around with it. So one of bragging rights. So again, this is the one that this doesn't do it justice sitting in front of us at home. I have a much bigger screen sitting on it. It's just a portable screen I have. But the bigger monitor at home, again, I'm going to be able to customize the size in case I grew out of it. I can just get a bigger monitor, or even hook it up to a TV if I wanted to. I wanted to see my own photos. Facebook and, not Facebook, Apple TV and Chromecast and all those, they give you a speed of images, but they're not your own. You can customize them to use your own, but then it's not the same. You have to do some work to get it in there, so I didn't want to do that. Also needed a clock. Surprising, there's a clock on the wall, and you look in most people's rooms and there isn't a clock. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a website which I'll show later in the video, but it's a website called 8-Bit Dash. So what happens is anytime you go to this web page, it'll display the time, which is slightly wrong, in an animated 8-bit image. You refresh the page, it just gives you a new image every single time. So I thought that was a pretty cool site to use as a clock. And mentioned before, the digital frames are too small. Just showed you that 21-inch or 23-inch one was 300 bucks. They usually average around 10 inches in size. For comparison, this is a 13-inch monitor. So I wanted bigger because I want to be able to see them from a distance. Also wanted something that was tailored to my needs, which goes back to the first point. I have programming powers. I can do it. And of course, as I showed you before, I have a lot of photos. So, but before we get into the project itself, talk a little bit about Windows IoT Core. So this is Microsoft's, solution to using embedded operating system on small form factor boards such as Raspberry Pi. So it's optimized to run on smaller devices with or without a display on both ARM and x86 and x64 devices. There's a number of boards they support, over 50. I was a little surprised when I looked at that stat. I didn't realize it was that many, but supports the Raspberry Pi 2, Raspberry Pi 3B, Intel Compute Sticks, if you've seen those or worked with those, some other lesser known boards, Dragon Board, Minnow Board, and a few Logic Supply microservers. These are like little servers that you can just load any OS on when you want. And prior to setting up for this demo, I tried it. I picked up a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, which is the newest one that came out less than a month ago. Currently, Windows IoT Core is not compatible with it. They're working on that. It just won't boot. So you get what's called the rainbow screen at that. When you boot these things, you get a little rainbow screen. And if you don't give it enough voltage or you have the wrong OS on it, you just see the spinning rainbow screen. So don't try it with that unless you want to go for that. I haven't tried it with the, I believe it doesn't support the smaller Raspberry Pi as well. There's just not enough horsepower in it. But you can use it for the bigger boards without a head on it. So these are some of the features that it has. So it's video support via HDMI, which is native to the Raspberry Pi 3 board. It's limited support for some of the Raspberry Pi LCD screens. There are some that work, there's some that don't. It's hit or miss. You probably want to search on that online to make sure that it's compatible. I'll touch on that one later. It has audio mic support, again, that's native in the board. Surprising thing I found, it has Cortana voice support. So you can build Cortana devices off of this. It is a feature toggle, you can turn it off. I have mine turned off, but I don't have a mic in it. Built-in Bluetooth support, built-in Wi-Fi support. You can do apps in C++ and C#. You can do UWP apps. You can run the same apps that you run on the Raspberry Pi, I'm sorry, on Windows IoT on Windows 10, and I'll show you that a little later. It also supports remote debugging, so you can deploy it to the device and do remote debugging, step through your code, all that, all the things that you come to expect. There's no editing, continued support on that. You'll just have to compile it and redeploy it again. So it's much like creating or debugging on a mobile device. Compatible with many sensors and shields. So these are the things that are native to the Raspberry Pi ecosystem. I'd say many. Again, this is something you want to search and make sure that there's support on. However, there are plenty of libraries that will give you connectivity into the boards and the pins to get your features going. Something I learned the other day has compatibility with Microsoft Cognitive Services and OpenCV. If you watched the build videos in previous days, they demonstrated some of that with facial recognition. So they had a camera, they hooked it up to a Raspberry Pi and demonstrated facial recognition. Running on the Raspberry Pi. It was real time, pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. You can do remote PowerShell connectivity to it, as well as it has I didn't put it on here, but it also has a browser-based console, which I'll show you later, and also has support for Azure IoT Hub. Azure IoT Hub is pretty much a place where you can store all your sensor data, do some compilations of things. It's part of the Azure ecosystem. It's a little overkill for what I was doing, but again, it's just good to mention that that's there. So wanted to give you a quick demo of dashboard. So that I do need to come here, and that's the application running there. We'll come back to that. So here's what they call the Windows device portal. So this dashboard here is running on my actual frame that's at home. So there's a browser interface to it. You can set various settings on it. So here I can set audio controls on it. I can set the speakers, the microphone. Just to show you that it's actually running something, I can actually grab a screenshot from the application or from the device. And in a second, I believe it will show up. I think it does. Or I guess maybe I have to download it. See what happens there. Just have to download. Okay. Open it. And okay, maybe that doesn't work. Okay. It's been a while since I clicked on that button. I had a need to do it. Let's see. You can also set administrator password here. Funny thing about it is you set this up and then you first go in, it asks you for a password, and then there's often times where it doesn't remember that password. So this is one of those gotchas that I mentioned in the description of the meetup. So you'll have to come in and set the default password again. If you're going to do debugging, you're going to need a remote PIN. Visual Studio will prompt you for this when connecting to it. I can demonstrate a little bit about that later, but it doesn't ask for it every time. Set time zone, that's important. As you can see, one in the room says the wrong time. For some reason, it's got set off there. Set the resolution to the screen that it's displaying, as well as the orientation. You can also, if you have a touch screen, you can set an on-screen keyboard and turn on Cortana. So I have mine turned off to take resources that I don't need. So there's other things in here. So you can see the list of applications that are running, or installed rather. So here in a second, this will refresh, and it will give me all of the applications that are running. So by default, it's running, well, Cortana's installed, but it's currently stopped. And I can set this here to set the application that starts on startup of the device. And that's important if you want to run a device like or a program like I have, like the picture frame. You would set the auto start every time you turn it on. There's also a default launcher that comes with it. Actually, I guess I can turn that on the device here. But there's a default launcher that comes in. It allows you to configure some basic things about it, such as Wi-Fi connectivity, Bluetooth devices, things like that. And it also points you to some of the samples. So it doesn't really do too much, but it just demonstrates, some of the capabilities of the software. This IoT Core default app is available on GitHub from Microsoft to give you the full source for that. I'll have a link for that later where you can get that. But that functions there. This Core default application, I'm not sure what the difference between app and application is, but this IoT UWP, that's just there. I have no idea what that is. I think that's a background process. That's just foreground. This application right here, it's pronounced Curator, just from the term curate. So it's Curator Pi. This one. So that's my application. It's currently running, and then we have the IoT onboard task, and that's just a background task that runs that keeps the application flowing. There's some basic File Explorer capabilities here. I've never tried to drill through it just because it's web-based and it's just going to take too long. And then there are some pre-installed quick, or the ability to install and run some of these same applications here. So there's this Hello World application that you can install and run. Again, they have the source code and a tutorial link for that. There's an internet radio one. You can set up internet radio. There's IoT Core Blocky. So there's a, what's it called? There's a Raspberry Pi Sense Hat, which is a grid of LEDs that you can use and program those to do all kinds of things. It also has other abilities built into the hat. Hat is just the board that's put on top of the device. I haven't played with one, but from what I've seen, they're pretty cool to play with. They seem to be really kid-friendly if you wanted to teach young ones how to do code or interact with the boards, but from they're pretty nice. And then there's a IoT Hub client, which never used. Actually, that might be the first time I've seen that. So that's a little new. Wasn't there when I first started playing with this, and I haven't gone through any of these samples. Oh, by the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to holler them out as I go along. Blockley. So that's this guy here. So this is a picture of what that's the graphical presentation. So it's no. Oh, wait, there you go. So it's a 7x7 grid of LEDs, and each one is individually addressable. So you can use it to mimic a screen or programs or things like that. That's what they were showing on the demo at Build. So did you see that video when he was doing the face reading?
I saw a lot of them. Okay. People coming over my desk.
So. Okay. Mine too. But so they were during the facial recognition. They were using this board and just
it was X versus
yeah.
Scott Hasselman was doing it.
Yeah. Scott, one of the Scotts.
Well, both of them were there, right?
Yeah.
Not Scott.
Yeah, not
Yeah, so, yeah, Scott too.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that board that was saying the X and the O, that's this board.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. So and then of course this is Windows scaled down, but it's Windows, so you get a processor list, see all the processes running, same things that you see in Windows, so the name of the process ID, who it's running under. You run under a default user in Windows. You still have the same users that you see typically in Windows, so you have local system, network, network, who is it? Network somebody, and all the other users. You also get the session ID. There's always one session. I don't know why there's a session ID. Doesn't be logged in as one person at a time, as well as how much the CPU is using, working set, memory, commit size, and all those other fun things. Also mimicking the task manager, you get the view of the resources being used, CPU, I/O, memory, network. They display in somewhat real time, I guess. I have to trust that it's real time. But it gives you a sense of what's going on here. You also have a command window, command prompt to run commands here, and it will give you the output here. There's some debug settings here. I've never really played with them, but you can get crash dumps from various processes, or you can configure your own. There's nothing in there. You get kernel dumps. Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But you can start the Visual Studio remote debugger. It's going to be needed in case you want to do remote debugging. You try to start up and connect to the board for the first time. It will tell you that you need to start it. So you would just need to come in and start. It starts by default, and this button just always says start. So there's ETW tracing. Again, I haven't used it, but if you want to set up your own custom providers and go through setting all that up, that's all here. You can also do some basic form of perfmon. So you can set up profiles and trace some of the items that are in the OS. I haven't gone through that, but there are some things there. There's some device management. So again, like the device manager you have in Windows, any connected devices that come in through USB, you get access to those. Configuration for the various remote protocols, Bluetooth. I have nothing paired. The network supports wireless and wired, so you can come in, and if you need to point your device at a new network, you can do that here through the device. You can also use it as an internet sharing device. I've never tried that. And then there's the all boarding, which all join, which I don't think anyone ever uses, but they have support for all join here, as well as soft AP. Some TPM configuration, they never jumped into that. And then here's another one of these weird quirks with the Windows Update. So this device also can update itself and reboot automatically by itself. As you can see, the last time I checked was on the 14th, and then it failed on the 10th. So quite often, I know I'm not on the latest version because it's going to tell me that there's an update. It will attempt to update and it will fail. It takes like a minute or so for it to fail, but it will not update. It's weird, and one of the quirks, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There have been times that it's just updated and worked automatically. I just keep trying every now and then, and every now and then it succeeds. But if it starts to download, it will warn you before rebooting. But there is a way to have it automatically checked. So we'll come back to that because that's going to fail. Now, so then there's this IoT remote server process. And so you'll need this if you want to do any kind of remote connectivity to it. There was a feature where you could do a remote desktop to it. That feature was fixed a few builds ago, a few months ago, to where you can no longer use remote desktop to connect to it. Yeah. talking to it with Lee last night, where it just stopped working. Don't know. It's supposedly being worked on, but You just turned it off. There's even an app for it I have installed, but it just doesn't work. Yeah, they fixed the bug. So then there's this scratch space, which they decided to insert a little humor here. And this scratch space is just basically a custom dashboard that you can build. So any of the components that I just went through here, you can take those and add those on here. Tools menu, I don't have a tools menu. So if I had a tools menu, yeah. So if I had a tools menu and I could add some stuff, let's say I wanted to add some things I wanted to keep track of, I add those and then they show up here. So I don't have to click through all the various navigation points here. I can just come over here and just click through these tabs, remove one if I don't want it anymore, and just look through them there. Just a convenient way of accessing commonly used areas. And then there's the tutorial here, which we won't go through the tutorial. So that's pretty much the desktop in a nutshell there. One thing also to go through is there. So in order to set up Windows IoT, take a step back here, you have to download this application called the Windows IoT, no, not the remote client. Oh yeah, the remote client, sorry. So remote client lets you, no, this is not what I want.
It's interesting that you are doing all this Microsoft presentation from Mac.
Well, yeah, well, yeah, because it's running on a Windows computer now. I'm remoted into the Windows. So you want this Windows IoT Core dashboard, which updates every time you launch it automatically. This remote client is the thing that I was saying that doesn't work anymore. So, so as you can see, it picks up my device. It found my device. Just get rid of this for the sake of doing it. And when we try to connect, I think it just spins. Does nothing. Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. Who's that? And I think my dashboard quit. Okay. Where's it thinking? No, there it goes. Okay. So to get started with Windows IoT Core, you need to download this IoT dashboard, and this will do a lot of the work for you. So started up, it's picked up my device that's on my network at home. And to launch that portal that's back here, you can launch it from here. So if you right click on it, eventually a menu will pop up and give you choices of what you can do with the device. So you can, it still offers you to do the remote desktop, which doesn't work. It will offer you to, oh, I'm sorry, it's the action button. There we go. You open the device portal, you can launch PowerShell. The remote client, again, doesn't work. You can open a network share on it, copy the addresses from it, shut it down, start it up, or send, I'm guessing, bless you, I'm guessing that's Microsoft feedback, bless you, I don't know whose feedback it's into. But this will find devices on your network, it tells you down one, or if you need to set up a device, you go here, you choose the type of device you're going to do here, or the board rather. So we're doing a Raspberry Pi 3. You give it your network. The network is not your Wi-Fi, unintended. And you choose your version of Windows that you want. It will always give you either a preview or the latest version. You only install one of those two. And then it will ask you to pick a drive. You give it a device name. Mini Win PC is default. And then this is where it asks you for that password. They ask you the password, then they ask you to confirm it, and then they throw it away. Maybe it's been fixed in the download that I just got, but I've had that happen a few times. I'm trying to do these. Then check the box and hit download and install, and then walk away and do something else. And in about 20 minutes, it'll finish writing the OS to the device. Writing the OS to the card. So you have to take the card and stick it in your computer. can only do this on a Windows device, which is why I'm doing this on Windows. You know, I'm sitting here on a Mac. Can't do this from Mac at all. So, yeah, so do that, and then once you insert it into your Raspberry Pi, there'll be a little more setup, but it's pretty quick and goes through pretty easy. Micro SD card.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Microsoft has a list of compatible cards on their site that they recommend. The largest size that they recommend is 32 gig. I think the lowest they recommend is 8. I haven't tried to install anything larger, or anything smaller. But yeah, 8 to 32. This says. Yeah. So what they do, actually, I've got to get to that. So what they do is they create multiple partitions on the card. So if you keep the card in your computer and you try to access it, you only get the main partition. You won't get the other partitions. The main partition is actually small. So you'll find one of the common things people say is, yeah, there's 32 gig card, and I can only see 700 meg. And that's only because you only get access to the primary boot. You can't even see the other partitions in there. So they've hidden it so that, and I believe it's protective security for the device. Again, this is supposed to be a prototyping device, so they want you to be able to create secure applications or secure devices and deploy those anywhere. So it's protected partitions that they create. They create 4. You can only see 1. How many? What? How much space? 8 gig. You'll need an 8 gig card. I think someone's at the door. Yeah, I believe it's my father. Might be. He's calling me, actually.
This requires
No, 8 gig card. It doesn't require 8 gigs of space. It's gonna create the primary. It's gonna create the primary partition, and then create 3 other partitions with what's left.
Gotta show up like $10 for it.
well, this isn't the SD card. This is just a hard drive plugged in.
Oh,
And actually, well, I can't shut that down. And they don't show you really anything in the web portal. Can't really see anything. The size. I can show you tomorrow. Yeah, that'll just open a link and you're gonna open up another browser. But that'll open up a link and go to another place, which I'll come back to. So while that loads. So yeah, so it's screenshot. I might have had a screenshot of it. I took some screenshots of this in case I could get into my device because it's still in the night and you never know what the power. So when I go back to the slides, I'm going to skip a couple of slides, which are just screenshots of what we're looking at now. But they may have oh, wait, there. So there's hardware compatibility. So you go through the list here at the bottom, the half the sensors. Oh, did you see storage?
yeah.
Probably the first thing wanted on the screen. Okay, here. Okay, so yeah, so they say 16. So 16 is recommended. 13 or 16, not 8. But I believe it will install on the 8. I've only used Evo cards, the Samsung Evo cards. I guess the SanDisk will work. They recommend it, so I guess it will. It's one of their verified. I'm sure it'll probably work on any other card that's fast enough. But if you're just playing around and you want to be sure that it works, I would just go with their recommendation. 32 gig card is like $20 right now, so it's not too much to shell out. Yeah. Let's see what else. Second here, I'm sorry. let's see. So then you can set up the Azure IoT Hub. I've just never set that up, so I don't. That's why I'm logged out here. And then here again are some links to some more of the samples that they have, so you can go through and do those samples. If you want, download them here since they're do you no good on the device itself. So yeah, you can go through that way. Any questions on this so far? There you go. So I meant to have a card in here to try to walk through that, but so let's check on that Windows update. Fail. So as I expected. Yeah, there's. Remember, I said I was a glutton for punishment. You kind of have to be with this because it's still beta.
So, I mean, 5 days ago, oh no,
yeah, it failed 5 days. They won't even report that it's still going. But so yeah, so you have to be patient with this. It's easy to get frustrated with this, but there are a lot of pain points in this, and you just have to become accustomed to it. Well, we'll come back to that. So let's get past a bunch of these. Let's do these. Okay, so now we're all set up. We got the application running. So now we're now. Okay. That's a good effect when we come back. Oh well. Yeah.
Here?
Something about
Down
time.
there.
No, well. Oh well. So now we're in this much. Now you have the fun meat of the project. So now we're at the actual project, which again I mentioned earlier. It's called Curator. So I decided to have some fun with some letters there. We took out some letters, changed some letters. So it's Curator. That's a wax mark. In case you're wondering what that is. So it's a wax mark. People used to put their initials on for envelopes and stamps and things like that. So I don't know why I chose that logo. I was just coming up with some things, and that's what it ended up being. So digital picture frame, which as we're looking at it, isn't working right now, but still doing the same thing and probably at the same time. Now he says he's here. He said he's here now. There you go. No. Oh, yeah, he's not at my car. All right. Yeah, he's out front. He's at my car. All right. So real quick. So here's the feature list. So we have random photo display, which is essential for photo frame. Which I don't know if you've ever played with random numbers, but random numbers are fun and they're not truly random. So there's some extra work in there to actually make them random. And not only random, unique. Has a pause and resume for slideshow, basically a slideshow. And there's some offline support-ish, which is not really meant to function offline. I had to make some tweaks for it to function offline, which is probably why this doesn't work right now. Because it's meant to be in a connected area. However, if you notice, let's see if it'll work. So right now it is paired with my phone. And I have it, there's two things connected. So I have it paired with my phone, and I'm going to turn off my hotspot. And let's see if it responds. So it should get a red border if it's actually responding around it. Maybe not. You said the security people keep looking at them. I guess, yeah. It did respond. So I think I can demo that later. But it has some knowledge of connectivity to the network. That was a little essential since this is connected via Wi-Fi. Every now and then it will just drop and would drop and I didn't know, and then something would crash. So I built in some fault tolerance for that, for the connectivity. There's a configurable repeat photo tracking, which is how it works with the randomness. So rather than just randomly generate numbers, I ended up using a queue and just making sure that I had a unique set of images coming through. So, just randomly, every few hours or so, every few hours it will go through and just reshuffle the photos so I can get some more randomness out of it, as well as tracking the photos. And of course, the big thing that I wanted, which was the animated GIF support. So that's built into there as well, and that's not that's not what you see here. This is just a web page, but all the images are rendered with the built-in .NET image view. Again, there's some time-based things happening there. So settings. So this has no UI. It's not meant to have a UI. So a lot of things are meant to be done remotely. So every few minutes or so, it calls out to my server and does some checking of some stuff. So some metadata refresh. There's metadata in there that it uses to figure out some things. And there's some hockey app integration for application help. So anyone here familiar with hockey app? No? Okay. So hockey app was an independent company. They were acquired by Microsoft a few years ago. It's basically a deployment, how would you describe it? It does a lot of things. Yes. There you go.
Sends out all the info.
Yeah, it will send you stuff. Yes, it will send out a stack trace to the site. They will email you as well. Since acquiring it, Microsoft has deprecated it and started. Yes, that happens. Yeah, it does the same thing. So they sent me an email and said, "Hey, we're gonna migrate you over." So automatically, so I said, "Okay." I went to the site and what? Well, I went to the site and it migrated my data over and said, "Yeah, come back later when we finish." Yeah. So my stuff is there. Well, it's hockey app still functions, which I found out the other day because I made it crash and sent me an email. So I had to, but we'll go in. I'll show hockey app in a second. But so yeah, it works. I mean, they migrated my stuff over, but you can't use it directly yet. You have to still keep using hockey. So this is a rough outline of what this looks like. So there's a number of things here. So this guy right here, the monitor, is actually what the the website is. So, or I'm sorry, what this device will be. So this is Curator Pod. Another application over here, it's running on my laptop, which I'll also show you in a second. It's called Curator Win, so Windows, right? So in the middle here, there's my NAS, which is running a web service. Another gotcha, which I'll get to in a second. So Curator Win here just talks to looks at the images on the NAS and creates a file for Curator Pi here to access, so it knows which images to get. That list, however, can only be retrieved through a web service because Windows IoT Core cannot access the network natively because it is running as a UWP app. UWP has some security implications built into it that prevent direct file access unless it's connected to an AD domain. Yeah. Now, I didn't want to spin up a whole domain in my house, so I said, okay, well, I guess I got to build myself a web service. I built myself a web service to feed information to it. So all communication with the NAS is done through the web service, which is why I had to do some things here to turn some things off. And then the device itself goes out to the internet and talks to 8-bit dash itself. So there's no connectivity. Sure. Mm-hmm.
This machine itself, was it? I forget the brand name. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I was trying to figure out where the Raspberry Pi was.
It's just represented by the monitor. No. Yeah, it's just represented by the monitor. They don't have a Raspberry Pi engine.
I wasn't sure. I knew it had to be there somewhere.
Visual doesn't have that yet. So there's one of the other gotchas. So Win connects via direct Windows access, and this is web service calls. So this is what you see on the screen here. So that's a different page there. But so let's take a quick tour of how it looks. So I have it here running. So remember I said you can run, no, that's Win, sorry. Remember I said you can run the application in Windows. So this is that same source code running in Windows here. So as you see, it's going to refresh. It's going to display. So the way this works is it will display the time randomly. Everything's random. So the time it will display randomly. Then it'll cycle through some photos, and then randomly it will. Oh yeah. There's be lots of photos of me. So, and maybe my brother would have. He might pick up too. That's my brother. So, I'm also a runner too, which is. And this is me at a wedding. But any photos that are on here are embarrassing to me. But oh yeah, well that's what I brought. And this had all the images on it. But so as you can see, it's running. It's just saying from the wedding. Yeah, you guys are. So I had to build some things into it. So as you'll see here, there's a wait for a second so I can demonstrate that. So there's a menu bar that's appearing at the top there when the mouse is there. On the Pi itself, the mouse disappears, but can't do that on Windows because it's not a full screen thing. But move the mouse, and I get a menu here. Says the application name and version, and here's an animated GIF. So these are all GIFs. Anything that's animated is a GIF. So the file name, just so I can do some load debugging there. Some menu items here, so I can pause this. So this will just pause indefinitely while it's running. Resume feature there. You don't want to look at that all night, but the fireworks show. This button doesn't do anything, and this will close the application. As well as, if I can move that out of the way, you can show some labels for the menu items as well. There's also some of these things I've never really used, but you can use to get these control items in Visual Studio. This is currently running in Visual Studio right now, which I don't usually play with these, so I'm not going to click them and turn them on. But you're getting some stats here, so you're getting a frame rate that's happening up here. You're getting, I'm not sure what these two are here, but they're indicators as to what's going on as the application is running. So if I haven't been running it too long, you still get the same stats that you get in Visual Studio. Now this isn't running in, this is me running locally. So I'm just going to stop it here. Let's start it up again later. So just to give you a demonstration of how this works. So this is a UWP app. So if we come into some of the pages here, we'll see some of the things we're used to seeing. So there's going to be eventually some XAML here. The whole UI is done in XAML. So it's not too much here, just to make up the UI. So you can see the various widgets here. In a second here, this will render. And one thing you might notice a little differently here is the device and architecture appear. So now in my architecture, I have an ARM, which is how it would deploy to the Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi is always running in ARM, or in your Windows device be x86 or x64, depending on which one you want to deploy it to. So if I change it to ARM, you're going to notice that this target here is going to change. So right now it says securify Windows. Oh, I'm sorry. The run button is going to change. So it's a local machine right now. So we'll change the on. It's going to update, and it's going to say remote device setting. So I probably should. Similar to if there we go, remote machine. Similar to if I had a mobile device plugged in, and I could run it and it will connect to my Raspberry Pi that's at home, but I don't want to do that because I'm going to deploy something that I wasn't ready for. But in order to get to that, what you would do is bring up the properties for the project. So in this case, it's the Universal Windows app project. You want to go to the debug, and in debug, you'll hear your target. So it's going to be a remote machine, even though it is a device. Devices are phones. RIP Windows phones, but it's the it'll be a phone. This will not run on Windows phone. I tried, and you can click this find button here, and this will do the same thing that the dashboard is doing. So it will attempt to search your network, try to find your various devices that you have. I only have one, so in this auto detect here, nothing. It's funny. It's there. So and you can choose your authentication mode. I usually leave it at universal. Windows will use Windows authentication, and since this is not on a AD domain, I can't use it. None I found just doesn't work. I don't know why it's there, but you can't turn off authentication on it. But it's there, and then you get those same options here. Also, you can just type in the name, so you can type in whatever you want here, and you can take that out because it's going to save that. All the other options are pretty much almost the same in terms of Windows application or .NET application. You still get the same panels here, although this new guy here, which is a package manifest. So for all the mobile developers in here, this is similar to your p-info list and your what's it called, manifest file in Android. So you're going to set up the same types of things as you've done Windows Phone development, same things you do in Windows Phone. So you set up the orientation for the device that it's running in, you set a name, an entry point, give it a default language, you set a screen icon, set some tiles here, create assets and set those up, because this can also be deployed to the Windows Store. So you would set up those same assets in here. You see I have all my assets set up here for the various resolutions and scales and things like that. Splash screens. Capabilities. So these are pretty much your permissions that your application can do. There are some that are in here that are required and some that are I don't understand why they're there. But in this case, enterprise authentication. I don't actually mentioned earlier that you need to be on an AD domain to do some things. However, you don't need to be on an AD. You need to enable enterprise authentication to do certain things within the application. So this had to be enabled for I can't remember what reason. Internet client server and internet client. Again, so since my application was displaying web pages, it needed to be a client server. Why it had to be a client and a client server, but it had to be both. Access private networks. So in order to access a Wi-Fi network, you need to have access to it. If you try to deploy the application without some of these enabled, it won't deploy. The device itself will just reject it. And it'll give you a very non-specific error as to why. So you just have to know in some of these cases. Declarations. So if you're going to access any type of file types on your device, you have to declare that your application is using it. So in here I have some GIF, MOVs. I'm not accessing those, but I figured I'd add them anyway in case I had support for those. So there's some video formats in here, as well as some image formats, text files. I'm accessing text files. That's also important. You want to access a text file within your own application, you need to declare that you're accessing the text file. Try share target, but that didn't work. So Content URLs. So if you create any type of content in, so if you're using like, what do they call it? The deep links within your application, you will have to declare those here. Add those to various URLs and things like that. And then you have the packaging. So it's like every other .NET app. You get a random GUID for your application. You give it a display name, and you can control various version information here. So the application actually uses this version, not the version in the settings file or the properties file. So, and then you can give it some other information here to display. So let's go back to this. So then I'm just going to start this up here. So run it again locally and just try to quickly walk you through some things that are happening, which is essentially what happens on the device. So as it starts, it's going to first do some checking. It's going to call out to my NAS and try to download some information. And it's going to create this little status window here. So I got this little yellow border here that's telling me it's doing something. And then this blue one. Blue one means that everything's good, it's connecting. So it's building the cache here, which means it's running through a list of files that I told it to connect, or to actually show on here. If there are any that it's going to pull down that are new, they're going to appear in red here. This only appears post time. And then once it's done, the border goes away, and the border goes away, and it resumes what it's doing. So then get back to the end of get back to the randomness of the pictures that show. And if you watch in the background here, you can see all the .NET stuff that's running. Actually, I'll try that. Let's try this.
Other pictures now? Is that what it's doing?
No, it's just running. That's just it operating. It will eventually start retrieving pictures. I think it depends on whatever I have it set at. I think it's every 6 hours. I think it's really, no. It tries to retrieve new pictures every 2 hours, and then it will resync. It will display unique images for every 23 hours, I think. Is that many? So, and then I can configure how long they're shown. So the time, actually, I'm doing some. I'm talking when we do this. I'm trying to deploy to the device. So what? I can configure everything about it. So the time displays for 20 seconds. So for this one. So, and the photos, so that's where some other stuff magic happens. So the GIFs display for a minimum of 10 seconds, I believe it is, unless they roll over. So it's a minimum of 10 seconds. There's my pen. Remember that pen I told you about earlier? I was expecting that to pop up. So no, this is at home. This is still remotely. Yeah, because this isn't on this network yet. So yeah, so there's some math involved with the GIFs. So if the math it runs over 10 seconds, it'll be 10 seconds in whatever it is. If it's 10.2, it'll display for 10.2, so then it finishes the run of each one. Yeah. And that was another thing I wanted. So I did find some things that display animated GIFs, but they would only show the GIF for, they would only do, yeah, let's see, this is the fun stuff with the captures I'm talking about. So, I got a second. So, yeah, so they would just only show for that time block and then just roll. Or some of them would just go through a single run and then switch to the next image, which it's not really what you want.
Right.
You know, if something's 2 seconds or shorter, you want it to keep looping for long enough to see it. So here's one of these gotchas I was talking about. So this is telling me that it can't deploy because the program is running. Now, what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to stop it, install it, and then start it. However, it can't deploy it because it's started. And it gives me this error that the target machine process can't be run. So in that case, what you have to do is you have to come to the application manager, and this is sometimes one of the gotchas, if it's nice to you. You have to come in and you have to stop it. Now, the way this thing works is if the process dies and it's set to start up, it will start it up. So you end up with this race to try to stop it and get it to not start again. Or you can just restart the device. But it takes a minute or two for it to start up. So maybe kick me out. Might have kicked me out. Let's see what happens. Sometimes if I've also run into cases where it just will not deploy, and then what I'll have to do is create a package and manually deploy it to the device. There's a spot for that in this add button here. You have to create a package and then just manually add it, and it will upload it and do the install for it. It looks like it doesn't cooperate right now, so I guess I'm not deploying it. So let's just continue on. So then there's this other application which I mentioned, which was Curator Win. I didn't say that in the title. So Curator Win looks at all the images on my NAS here. So these are all of the images that are in, have another program that will categorize the images for me by date. So I'll just insert a card, run the utility, and it will dump them on my NAS by date of when the photo was taken. So these are all those images there that it read up. And this is a very crude application. I just wanted it to do what I needed it to do. So gives you some basic information on the image, which you sort of see there. Just reading the EXIF from the image, you get some information. You'll notice some of these have icons on them, and that's just so I can tell what they are. So some of these are just images. Actually, all of them in this folder are just images. And then there's these blue ones here with the ribbons on them. Those are the ones that actually get cycled through. There are, I forget, there's a few thousand, I think, in there now that actually cycle through. And as you saw, hundreds of thousands of photos. So it got to the point where I was like, oh, well, can't go through all of these photos and find all the images. So there's this guy here, which gives me the list of all the images, and I can just randomly pick one in the list there and see which one it is. I don't know how to do that. So I see which ones are in there, and you know, if I want to remove it, I can remove it from here, or add one there, and there's me running it. So that's what I'm running part right there. So yeah, so I can just come through here, pick any image I want, remove them, add them. I wanted to come and add this one here. We just add that there and get a ribbon on that, and I'll just bookmark them and remove them from there. So this crude thing just creates the list that web service reads there. Now, this is a standard WinForms application. I'm currently rewriting it in UWP for many reasons. One of which I can sort of illustrate to you, because this is also running in Visual Studio. Okay, it hasn't quit on me. It's been running for 72 minutes now. In case you don't know, this guy quits after a while. So one of the reasons is I have this folder here that gets images from my phone automatically. And as you can see, it has 5,203 images in it. And it climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs, and it will consume 2 gig memory. Thankfully, I have too much RAM on my machine to hold that and the OS, but it will climb and climb and climb. This is one of the major things that I found with not only just this application in general, but playing with memory on Windows IoT as well, is you have to be careful with memory, because it will run out of memory and just crash, run out of memory and just crash. And if you have a long-running application like this that just randomly shows things, you might never know that it's randomly crashing because it restarts and just does something different. I'm just going to stop that. Take too long to stop. So when those crashes happen, not in that application, but in the other, we have Hockey App. So this is Hockey App. So these are all the versions that it has information on. So this, again, so apparently I have Enterprise, which I don't know how I have Enterprise. I have Enterprise. So you upload an application, and it will start collecting. As long as you add the various NuGet packages, it will just start uploading information. So a few configurations that you have to make in the application, but they're very small. You have to get a token from here, just like you would any other crash analytics application, and then you're just off to the races. So I can see here that I had I had 2 crashes the other day.
One pretty shoddy work machine.
Yeah. Well, that's how well, because I was trying to play around with this. Yeah. Well, again, so like it crashes and just restarts. You don't really know. And then, you know, it crashes in a way iOS apps crash sometimes, where it's just like, oh, it's going to crash and keep running. Yeah. So you don't always know it's crashing. So as you can see in the last 7 days, there's this nice little hockey stick here of errors, but I've removed that, as you can see. So tracks downloads, users, so you can, at least with Hockey App, and I'm assuming with App Insights, you'll be able to do the same. You can create beta testers, so if you move apps, you can send out beta bills to people and get information on those. Keeps track of the number of sessions. I don't know how I have that many sessions because there's only one application. And then you have some deeper bar graphs and things like that, crashes per day, and various information like that. So you can drill down into these. So let's go into this one here. That one caught everyone's attention. So it gives you the application name, the device. In this case, it reports it as Windows Phone. I don't know why, but it's a Windows Phone. Minimum OS, whether there's a crash is accepted. There's not too much information here. But if you go to the crashes tab, you start getting some information as to what happened. So 819 of these, so let's figure out what's going on here. And I did something really bad and really dumb. But it was kind of late in the day, and I probably shouldn't have been programming that again. So I got a crash dump here. It gives me the whole stack here, how many times it happened. So you're able to get all that information. I've used this with iOS applications. With iOS, you have to upload the symbol files in order to get the actual stack dump, or the stack trace. Otherwise, they just give you memory addresses. And just, yeah. I don't know what they do there over in Apple, but but
we're using Objective-C.
Yeah. So I can do a number of things. So I could I can go back and let's say, for instance, this has a status. So I can take. So I can say, okay, I resolved this, or I can ignore it, or I can delete it. So I know I resolved it, so I can mark this as resolved, and I don't believe there's a save button. It just stays resolved. And yes, stays resolved, and then I can move on. And if this pops up again, I'll end up getting an email. So there's somewhere in here, I can't remember where, but you can set it up to give you daily emails or emails when they happen. I found out early I didn't want to email when it happened, so I get daily emails because you have 19. So didn't have a flood of emails the other day, but that's pretty much how this guy works here. Again, there's some, so I went through some of the gotchas, the final list of other gotchas here. So, so if you want to find information on it, help is sparse. It's there, and some of it is dated. Windows IoT has been out for 3 years, I want to say, 3, maybe 4 years. You have to pay attention to the dates of things when they were posted, because a lot of information can be outdated, a lot of information can be older versions. There isn't really a good place to, well, there are some good places to go. Raspberry Pi's forums, they help sometimes. There are some active members there. You can try the Windows forums, the various ones that pop up there. Sometimes they're up to date, sometimes they're not, but just be careful when you're searching for things. Don't use Yahoo. File access, I mentioned some of this earlier. Since this is Windows, things run in isolated storage. So if you're familiar with many of the applications that install on Windows now in a user context, these applications install in those same contexts. So you don't have access to the entirety of the machine. You have access to just your local instance of the application in your file storage. So here's just a path that you can use to get the UNC path. So this is just what you have. Again, you have to use Active Directory if you want to use network resources. The OS creates multiple partitions. Talk about that a little. Only primary partition is accessible via the card, and you can use PuTTY and PuTTY in PowerShell for remote access. Stability. We've seen a little bit of this tonight. So you have to be careful of the memory space because it is aggressively trying to keep you from crashing the entire OS. So they will kill your app and then start to back up nicely, and kill you and start to back up nicely. OS builds can sometimes be unstable. They're getting better though. It's a lot better. It used to be that some of those crashes that I've had in history were just from the OS. Like I just decided I was going to deal with it. The OS updated and the crashes went away. I was like, okay, I guess it's not me. So you can end up with random freezes of the application. I think this is me not playing them for that, but you can end up with random freezes, random crashes. I have occasionally run into card corruption. Just it's a thing with running with Raspberry Pi, no matter what OS you're using, just can end up with a corrupt card or a corrupt image, I should say. Just reinstall it, hope the card still is useful. And I didn't mean to demonstrate this, but deploys fail for seemingly unknown reasons. So you just have to be patient with it, try to work through the things and try to get through it. And that's pretty much it. The application. You guys want some more resources on it. So this Windows on devices is a redirect. So it'll redirect you to their main portal for Windows devices. The samples that they have, the ones that we saw in the application, as well as some other applications demonstrating other functionality and uses, is in GitHub. The Windows IoT Core samples. Get information at the Raspberry Pi org, not only on Raspberry Pi, but on the other OSs that they have as well. And if you have Magpie, if you've ever heard of Magpie, Magpie is a Raspberry Pi magazine that they publish and distribute once a month. It's very expensive. It's $120, I think it is. Yeah, I subscribe to it. I have a bunch of them at home, but it's very expensive. However, they did a issue on it, issue 40. They did a whole issue on Windows IoT. It says Windows 10, but it's Windows IoT. And also there's the link there for App Center, in case you want to find out some information about App Center. Oh, one note, it will only run on Windows 10. So you have to be on Windows 10 Creators Edition or above in order to use Windows IoT Core in the development tools. Otherwise, even the other tools that I was using to connect to it won't run. You can't build images, you can't connect to it remotely, you can't see it. Like Visual Studio should work, but I think it will build. So, and yep, that's it. Any questions?
Well, you know what you got to do next. You got to look into that new APIs for recognition. You're doing the Win version.
I thought about that. I mean, I've been thinking about that. There are some things that I wanted to do with it, which thankfully I found other shortcuts. I was going to use some of the sensors for it. So it's a picture frame and it's a monitor that's just running all day. So my first idea was to get some sensors that I walk in a room, cut on the monitor. But I had to get the application working first. So I went through, we had to get the application working. By the time I got the application working, I got sick of dealing with the thing that was working. So I was like, oh, I'll get to it. And then smart plugs came out, like a smart plug that you can just plug in a device and turns on and off.
Oh, gotcha.
So picked up one of those and use IFTTT. So whenever I get close to my house, it turns on, and then I leave, it turns off. So I was like, okay, I don't have to build a sensor for that.
Nice.
One other thing you might notice is this is a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if you've ever dealt with a Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pis don't have power buttons.
You have power.
Yes, they have a power cord, which of course they recommend don't pull it out because you can corrupt it. But so this was responding. I recently added to the menu that X that was up here. If I click that, it'll turn it off, but it doesn't really turn it off. It kills the OS and doesn't power off. Okay. So then it's in, like, you know, like Windows used to do back in the day when you would shut down Windows and it's like it's safe to turn off now. That's sort of something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So it doesn't really turn off. So don't screw it in there. So that's the board there, and that's the cord at the bottom. But
is that the $35 model that you mentioned, or is that?
Yes, this one is 35. So that's a Raspberry Pi 3B, not the B+.
How did you get images off from there?
Oh, so there is a web service.
One in NAS?
Yeah, so I built I have a NAS. It's a QNAP.
Yeah.
So it's running Linux. And I built a web service in PHP. Free time. And, I know. Well, it was either that or figure out that core was in its infancy, so it couldn't do that. And then I had to figure out how to get Mono to run on the thing. So I built a web service in PHP. So what happens is
You have that file that tells you what file to go after.
Yeah. So what happens is there's a few things that are going on. So there's the file, which okay. So there's this file here, which is basically just a bunch of paths. So what I do is I take this path and I do a MD5 hash on it, just to get rid of any funky characters or anything. Do MD5 hash on it when it gets pulled down to the device. And then I use that as a key to determine which file to pull down. So yeah, so I call the web service with that path, and then pull it down. No. Yeah, I tried that too. It doesn't let you map. Well, you can map the path. However, you have to hack the image, and then it goes away when you. So yeah, it was pointless. I tried. It was a fun exercise, but that didn't work either. Yep. So this application, the source code itself was never really meant to see the light of day. So I don't have source for it. Well, I have source for it. I don't have publicly available.
I'm not sure that.
No. It was meant to run. Yeah. Once I was able to get it to run, I was like, yep. You're the-
I work can't find. Could be like many versions of different, .NET version. Got started, .NET version 1.